Ancient Greece was not a single, unified nation. It was a fractured landscape of hundreds of fiercely independent, highly militarized city-states. Athens, Sparta, Thebes, and Corinth shared a language, but they constantly competed for resources and territory. To avoid mutually assured destruction, these rival powers needed a neutral ground where they could mediate disputes and seek high-level diplomatic counsel. To establish that neutral ground, the Greeks relied on their shared mythology. According to the stories, Zeus wanted to calculate the exact geographical center of the universe. He released 2 eagles from opposite ends of the earth and commanded them to fly inward until their paths crossed. The point where those eagles met was Delphi. To mark the spot, the Greeks placed the omphalos, a carved beehive-shaped stone whose name literally translates to the navel of the world. Because Delphi was universally accepted as the cosmic center, it became the essential shared territory for all pan-Hellenic diplomacy, where rival kings could negotiate without ceding ground to a neighbor. The physical geography of Delphi reinforced its authority. Built on the steep, craggy slopes of Mount Parnassus, the sanctuary overlooked a sheer valley entirely removed from the major urban centers. It took days of difficult travel to reach. That remote, imposing elevation made the site feel physically separated from the mortal world, acting as an untouchable bridge to the divine. By combining a highly defensible mountain location with a universally accepted myth of cosmic centrality, the Greeks created an institution capable of mediating their disputes. Delphi served as a carefully engineered geopolitical anchor, holding a fragmented civilization together. Reaching the mountain was only the first step. Before a petitioner could ask a question of the oracle, they had to clear a series of physical and financial barriers. Supplicants first paid the pelenos, a mandatory consultation fee that scaled based on the wealth and status of the city-state they represented. Then they were required to undergo a rigorous purification ritual in the icy waters of the nearby Castalian spring. Next came the goat omen. Priests would take a sacrificial goat to the temple altar and sprinkle it with freezing water. If the goat shivered, it meant the god Apollo was present and willing to speak. If the goat stood still, the consultation was cancelled. This forced visiting kings and generals to wait, entirely at the mercy of the temple's schedule. When a supplicant was finally permitted to enter the temple vestibule, they were confronted by the Delphic maxims carved into the stone walls. Short, commanding phrases like "know thyself" and "nothing in excess." These inscriptions forced the visitor to self-reflect and weigh the gravity of their question before descending into the dark. This schematic shows the layout of the Temple of Apollo. The supplicant would stop in an outer waiting room, while the priestess, known as the Pythia, sat in the adyton. The adyton was a restricted, sunken inner chamber where no visitor was allowed to go. The supplicant could hear the Pythia, but they were kept physically separated from her. Every step of this process, the steep climb, the variable fees, the shivering goat, the intimidating maxims, and physical isolation in the dark, acted as a psychological filter. The protocol systematically stripped wealthy rulers of their ego, priming them to accept whatever the oracle said without argument. For centuries, historical accounts claimed the Pythia received her visions by inhaling vapors from a chasm in the floor. Modern geological surveys have confirmed exactly what was happening beneath the temple. The sanctuary sits directly above a major geological anomaly, the violent intersection of 2 active tectonic fractures, the Kurna and Delphi fault lines. This 3D cross-section illustrates the mechanics below the surface. The friction between these 2 fault plates generates immense heat, which crushes and cooks the subterranean layers of bituminous limestone. That process releases pockets of sweet-smelling hydrocarbon gases, which seep upward through the porous rock. Water and soil samples from the site show that the primary gas rising through those fissures is ethylene. In modern medicine, ethylene was actually used as an anesthetic. When inhaled in an enclosed space, it induces a state of euphoric dissociation and alters the function of the central nervous system. Sitting in the sunken, poorly ventilated adyton for hours, the Pythian was inhaling a constant, concentrated stream of ethylene. the gas triggered a highly visible physical reaction. She would enter a deep trance, adopting erratic postures and speaking in fragmented, ecstatic utterances that rarely made immediate sense to the listener. To make sense of those utterances, the temple relied on a team of priests known as prophetae. These sober officials stood near the Pythia, listened to her fragmented speech, and translated her words into elegant hexameter poetry. Hexameter is a highly structured rhythmic meter used in ancient Greek epics, giving the final prophecy a formal, authoritative sound before it was handed to the supplicant. By filtering the gas-induced ravings of the Pythia through the translation of the prophetae, the temple created a built-in institutional failsafe. The oracle never gave a direct yes or no answer. If a city-state followed the oracle's advice and was destroyed, the temple simply claimed the humans had misinterpreted the poetry. The god remained infallible. That calculated ambiguity was the true source of Delphi's power. By refusing to give straightforward answers, the oracle forced leaders to deeply analyze their own resources and strategies to solve the riddle. This dynamic was tested during the greatest crisis of the ancient Mediterranean. In 480 BCE, the massive Persian Empire invaded Greece. Facing an army that vastly outnumbered their own, the desperate leadership of Athens sent delegates to Delphi to ask how their city could possibly survive. The oracle's response was terrifyingly cryptic. The Pythia declared that Athens would burn and that the citizens should flee, but she offered one narrow sliver of hope, stating that Zeus would grant Athens a wooden wall that would not fall. The Athenian assembly immediately fell into a frantic debate over what a wooden wall actually meant. Some older politicians argued they should literally build a wooden fence around the Acropolis and hide behind it. But an Athenian general named Themistocles pushed a different interpretation. He argued the oracle was speaking metaphorically. To him, the wooden wall was a fleet of newly constructed wooden warships. He convinced Athens to abandon the physical city, evacuate the citizens, and bet their entire survival on the navy. Themistocles was referring to triremes, the standard Greek warships of the era, built with overlapping wooden planks and equipped with heavy bronze rams at the bow. In the narrow straits of Salamis, the Greek triremes executed a flawless naval ambush, systematically ramming and destroying the larger, less maneuverable Persian fleet. The Athenian victory at Salamis proved Themistocles right and perfectly preserved the oracle's reputation. But the Pythia had not handed Athens a tactical blueprint. By demanding the Athenians interpret the wooden wall, she forced them to evaluate their own naval strength and take decisive action. The true function of Delphi was right there in the vestibule. Know thyself. The oracle simply provided the psychological framework